George W. Bush was born on July 6, 1946, in New Haven, Connecticut. In grade school, he was a subpar student. Nevertheless, family connections helped him enter Yale in 1964, where he, like his father, was a member of the secret society Skull and Bones. In 1968, he graduated Yale and, using family connections, entered the Texas Air National Guard. After his discharge in 1974, he enrolled in Harvard Business School, from which he earned an MBA. Afterwards, he entered the oil business in Texas, married Laura Welsh, and had 2 daughters. In 1978, he made his political debut when he entered to be a Texas representative in Congress. However, he lost and returned to his business. In 1988, he helped his father, George H.W. Bush, with his presidential campaign. His father held office from 1989 to 1993. In 1994, George W. Bush made another attempt at political office, and this time succeeded, defeating Ann Richards to become governor of Texas.
You trust government? I trust you. I'm asking for your vote.
In 2000, he won the Republican nomination for the presidency, running with Dick Cheney against Democrat Al Gore. In this map, Bush won all the red states and Gore the blue. Although Gore won more popular votes, Bush obtained more electoral votes, 271 compared to 266, and through a Supreme Court decision became president. On September 11, 2001, 19 members of Al-Qaeda, an Islamic extremist group, hijacked 4 planes and crashed them at key targets in the United States. 2 of the planes hit in New York City, the 3rd attacked the Pentagon, and the 4th crashed in Pennsylvania. These attacks, now referred to as 9/11, resulted in 3,000 deaths, a new initiative to combat terrorism, and a fear for the nation's protection. Bush was not hesitant to use military action, stating, "We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them." And with that, the war on terror began.
On September the 11th, enemies of freedom committed an act of war against our country.
After the events of 9/11, Bush quickly began to shift his focus onto foreign policy rather than domestic affairs. He believed in acting preemptively to prevent any more attacks and protect the country. In October of 2001, Bush issued a declaration of war to Afghanistan, ordering the Taliban to surrender all al-Qaeda leaders and return diplomats and journalists to the United States. If they refused to cooperate, U.S. troops would invade. On October 7th, Operation Enduring Freedom was launched in response to the Taliban's lack of reaction. The military attacked terrorist camps and their military bases, officially beginning the war in Afghanistan, a war that would last years to come. Even before the situation in Afghanistan was settled, Bush once again shifted focus to another Middle Eastern country, Iraq. He received reports, which later proved to be fake, that the country had amassed chemical and biological weapons of mass destruction. In the most controversial decision of his presidency, Bush decided that if ruler Saddam Hussein refused to hand over the weapons, the U.S. would invade.
Saddam Hussein and his sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours. Should Saddam Hussein choose confrontation, the American people can know that every measure has been taken to avoid war, and every measure will be taken to win it.
On March 19, 2003, the war in Iraq began. Although Bush reasoned that the U.S. was fighting for human rights and the defense of freedom, public opinion soon turned against the war, for it was costing money and lives. Hussein was eventually captured, but the deaths of U.S. military and friendly Iraqis by insurgents in the country posed a new threat to Bush during the second term of his presidency. Because of the threat to American security, George W. Bush had to put many of his domestic policy plans on hold. A key part of his running platform was the tax cut he was proposing. The emphasis he put on tax relief made him a popular candidate. However, the deficits the Bush administration accumulated were the largest in history. Another piece of legislation that he pushed for was the No Child Left Behind Act, an act that mandated state testing and rewarded high-performing schools with more federal funding. It garnered a lot of criticism when it was not appropriately funded, and many people linked the lack of funding to the tax cuts.
Yeah, they did hate it. I can understand that. Look, the idea of spending taxpayers' money to give to Wall Street and the banks to save them. A lot of people think they created the crisis in the first place.
After facing unprecedented foreign threats and internal economic distress, Bush took actions that the public received with controversy, causing a wide deviation in the masses' feelings towards his policies, acts, and riveting America into international conflicts. The Iraq War unofficially ended in 2011, and America continued battling through an impossible war in Afghanistan until 2014, both conflicts coming to a close after Bush left office. While some disagree with these possibly unnecessary wars and the huge funds flowing into foreign affairs, others view Bush's attack on terrorism as justified and successful in battling forces of evil threatening the safety of United States citizens. As seen in the graph, debt from many of Bush's domestic policies, such as increasing the taxes and adding the TARP in conjunction with the costly wars, increased the national debt to a high that is still in existence today. But the Bush's family political legacy doesn't end with George W. Bush, for his brother, Jeb Bush, plans to run for the Republican candidate in the 2016 election for president.
But with the courage of our people and confidence in our ideals, this great nation will never tire, never falter, and never fail. It has been the privilege of a lifetime to serve as your president.